We're live, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee being held on today, Tuesday the 8th of July 2025. For those present in the meeting room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings, providing that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may be made aware. For participants in the room, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to contribute. When invited to speak, please press the button on the right of the microphone unit and speak directly towards the microphone. Please remember to turn off your microphone once you have finished speaking. Please ensure all mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silent. For participants in attendance remotely, can I request that you use the raise hand feature within the system if you wish to contribute and to introduce yourself when called upon. Please note that only committee members present in the meeting room may vote. Clerk, do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we don't have any apologies for absence, but Councillors Owens and Phillips are not here in attendance.
Okay, I hope they are in good health and I will contact them after the meeting. So no name substitutes? Right, do we have any declarations of interest? Do any members wish to declare an interest in the agenda item? No, thank you. Okay, minutes. The minutes document of the meeting held on the 3rd of June 2025 is included in the agenda at pages 13 to 22. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Are you all content that I sign the minutes as an accurate record? Yep. All those in favour that we're here? 3. I think that's enough, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Right. We will sign those. No questions? Just understand as far as questions have been from the public. No questions have been received from members of the public on this occasion, and no questions have been received from councillors on this occasion. Oh, we're rattling through this, which takes us on to. I know, don't speak too soon. I don't. No, it gives us time to get into the meat of the meeting, which is what we're here. Gully cleansing. To provide an overview of the management and operation of gully cleansing, endorsing or otherwise the current arrangements and providing recommendations to the Cabinet Member for Roads and Regulatory Services. We're lucky to have Bruce Evans, Engineering Manager, and Steve Hodges, Director to the Services Team Leader with us today. And I'm going to hand over to them to update us on what's been going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bruce Evans, Herefordshire Council Engineering Manager. The report before Council is really the preparation for what we're going into the new contract for 2026. It covers what the assets we've got now, what we propose to do. Just before I start, BBRP done a bit of a presentation what they do as a quarterly update. Is it worth showing a couple of slides of those, what we do at the moment, and there's a video that we've had? Is it worth just a quick share of that unless everyone's seen it?
I think that would be a value for us and for all the many viewers at home. Thank you.
Bear with me a second, I'll just join the meeting.
If you use that, you can just share this with.
Oh, wow.
Just give it a second.
Modern technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Looks good. Or maybe not. Sorry, could you set to your full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's not going to do it, Sorry, yeah, you may have to join the meeting, sorry.
Okay. Bear with me a second, Chair. hopefully. Apologies. Oh. Apologies for that. This is a presentation from BBLP in their quarterly update. It's just relevant to this. It gives a brief idea of really what we do now with gully emptying, jetting. It's one slide which covers what type of work we do with the gully cart, but then there's a little video after. I can just show that. It's not too long. Basically, at the moment, we're running two gully carts, one reactive. They're both jetting machines. They attend on site, they clear the gullies, jet the system. They have been doing a lot of reactive works at the moment, and there is a program that's on the website. The report runs through what we do, how we do it, but this is just a quick brief. So if I just show you the video. Bear a second here, I just need to get sound on. Oh, not again, no.
You have stopped sharing your screen.
Stop sharing.
Okay, may I?
Yep.
Which is that window there?
Which one are you looking at?
Balfour Beatty, in partnership with Herefordshire Council, working for Herefordshire. We maintain the highways across Herefordshire, which includes 30,000 drains. Why do we clear out drains? We clear out drains to prevent blockages in the pipes and ensure water can drain off the road quickly. Drainage team are dispatched to the site. Our team arrives and sets up signage with operative control to stop-go temporary traffic control on the section of the road. The team first lift the grate, inspect the drain and clear the debris with the boom vacuum. The team set up a high-pressure hose into the drainage section of the block's drain. Water pressure pulls the hose along the drain. Operative signals the high-pressure hose has made its way through and cleared the blockage. If the hose is stopped and not cleared, further investigation will be needed. Operative clears water and remaining debris out of drain. Checks it's running smoothly and replaces the grate. Job done. Drainage facts. Our reactive teams attend around 3,250 drainage jobs a year. If you suspect a blocked drain, report it on our website, herefordshire.gov.uk/report it, or call 01432 261 800. Balfour Beatty, in partnership with Herefordshire Council, working for Herefordshire.
Jess, I just thought that might be useful just as a bit of a background to what we do now. The plan is to carry on the good work we're doing at the moment with the gully emptying into the new contract. What will change is the client side will be stronger. The intelligence side from BBLP will be transferring over, hopefully. And in that, we'll have a bigger, stronger client function. That will be the locality stewards who've got the eyes and ears on the ground, and we've got the drainage team that will sort of complement what Steve's been doing as well with his drainage teams coming through. The plan is to, with the contract, is to bring in IT that would manage the system as well. So with the reporting, it's hopefully it's going to be something like Carbon Tech is one of the IT systems out there. There are others around that can be used. And that will be then used to prioritise and understand what we're doing and prioritise what we do with gutters, jetting, clearing systems. I think it's probably worth understanding that obviously it's such a sensitive area with drainage clearance because of flooding and the impact it has on people's lives. It's not just gutters, there's ditch clearing, grip clearing, which is a lot of our assets around there. And not just gutters, we have pits and systems that we need to maintain. Proposal is to get a system in place that will manage those for us, prioritise where we get with flooding issues, identified those locations, report on them. So all the intelligence we've got at the moment of where these flood areas are can be logged, and in that we can then prioritise what we do with works and ensure what we get done. It is a revenue function. It is something that's a pressure on the council, but by improving what we do on getting the system in place, that will better help us direct to what we need to get to on site. So where we do get flooding areas regular, we can inspect them and rectify them as quick as possible. The rest of the report is really just going on about the management system, but how we're going to do the contract. There's not really a lot more to say about the system itself or what we do. We just need that contract in place with the term maintenance contractor that we can get in partnership, and the sooner we can get that on board, we can then get the functions working. But the big change is really the staff coming over to the system, over to the council, that we can then utilise, get more eyes on the ground. The council have the more managerial function of what's going on in the network, and with the system, with the gutty carts coming in place, we can manage that as well. In tandem to what we're doing at the moment, and probably will carry on, is a lot of our resurfacing schemes we are doing hedge to hedge. So where there are drainage issues on that, we're easily identifying and rectifying them before we're resurfacing. There's also some additional money that's being found in contract that we can do some more gutty emptying with, that small contracts going out. As we set with the annual plan, we set the funding for the drainage, and that's pretty much on the resource implication side of really what the cost has been over the past, since 2022-23 to now. Again, it's really every year the budget setting is, we've got the budget through from the RTP, what we get from the council, and it's just really identifying where the pressures are and what we need for the resurfacing, what we need for the maintenance of the other assets, but primarily the bigger problem with identifying where we need the gully emptying, the ditch clearing, and every other function we need with the systems. And that's really where we get the term maintenance contract on board with a new provider. And once we've got that up and running, we'll be good to go. That's what I've got to say. Anything from you, Steve?
Is pretty much. Sorry, I think Bruce has pretty much covered everything there. Myself and the two principal officers who've just joined the team, work closely with colleagues in Balfour Beatty, and obviously will continue to do so. And then in terms of, I guess, our wider functions around potential future uses of, say, other technology, opportunities, may come up at a regional level that may allow us just to explore, different opportunities, different ways of monitoring and keeping an eye in terms of levels in gutters. We'll continue to tap into those opportunities, and like I say, work with BBLP and Bruce and other colleagues within the council as well. That's it.
Thanks, Steve. Do you want to come in, Barry?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to say, obviously there are two types of there's the programme and there's reactive. And reactive, as we know, is expensive. So what we're looking at here is to go over to a more programmed area, looking at how we can best utilise the facilities we've got effectively in real time. One, you'll see in the report where we talk about locality stewards going out and finding a job, should we call it, and they then report it back on their tablet, which comes back into the office uploaded, and then we've got a real-time understanding of what's actually happened, and we can see trends, etc. So I see this as being more automatic overview of what's going on rather than chasing around all the time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. I'm just going to start the questions off, Bruce, then you can come in if that's all right. The reason we're here today, obviously you'll remember Herefordshire suffered some awful flooding last year, and a motion came to full council that was passed unanimously. And I thought it might be appropriate just to remind everybody here of what we all agreed we would try and do. The motion said that we would ensure all drains, gullies and culverts that fall under the responsibility of Herefordshire Council are accurately mapped. That we would undertake an urgent programme of rectifying and repairing drains, gullies and culverts where they've been damaged by the recent unprecedented period of rainfall. That we would develop a full county-wide maintenance schedule that anticipates the likelihood of heavier rainfall in the future. That we would then publish the maintenance schedule so that ward members, city and town parish councils and local people can have confidence in the plans. And that we would ensure that areas most at risk of flooding are prioritised for maintenance. What I'd like to do is go through each of those points, the 5 points, separately, and just ask for a progress update from when this motion was passed to where we are now. And, you know, if there hasn't been progress, that's fine, just to know when the progress is due to happen. I'm just concerned, and I'll say this now on the record, that we're putting a lot of faith and confidence in the contractor that comes next, and that we will then be 2 years on from when this motion was passed. So if we start with point 1, ensure all drains, gullies and culverts that fall under the responsibility of Herefordshire Council are accurately mapped. How has progress been going on that, please?
Chair, we're not fully there. It's going to be difficult to get fully there until we get all the county covered with inspections and basically getting there, digging out where these gutters are. We have made progress. It's continuously evolving what we know about the network. As it says in the plan, we've got 27,000 plus gullies there. There's probably about 37,000 out there that have been buried in times. And they're not just gullies, there are other assets as well, like pits, basically curb entry gullies, those sort of things, and acre drains and everything else like that. We've got the majority, but as we get around, we will continually evolve and grow what that asset is. The majority is there. It's on the website. So I think in the report we've got a link to the map of all the gullies, and we've got a link to the programme of what we're doing this year. It also references that basically through the winter we are reactive because of severe weather, rain and everything else that goes with it. But there's some links there that takes us to the website where we're at. If that comes back from the report, we can get you where we are up to date. I wouldn't like to guess. I'd be estimating where we're at on the percentage-wise what we got coverage, but I can get that for you.
I think what would be really useful, Barry and Bruce and Steve, would be to understand the plan for when we will achieve that first point. When will we have a high percentage of the drains mapped across the county? You know, are we looking at Christmas this year? Are we looking at spring next year? And a strategy for how we're going to achieve that, so that progress can be measured. At the moment, we have no way of measuring results and progress on that motion, which all councillors unanimously backed. And I think mapping them would be very, very useful. I also think when this was, we looked at some software, the mapping software that I know Ed Bradford showed us that he used to use when he was up in Solihull, which is relatively old tech now, which enabled somebody to click on the map, look outside their front door, and click on the drain that's outside their front door and see when it was last scheduled to be cleaned and when it would be next scheduled to clean. And I know that we quickly utilised the technology we had to put some of the drains that we knew about onto that map. But I fear there hasn't been a huge amount of progress in continuing that journey of mapping since that time. And it would be really good to have and understand the timeline for progress so that you can come back, we can talk and we can say, yeah, we're getting there. If there's a problem, because I know when we spoke to the leader, when we had that meeting, there was a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of support for getting this software on board. And it is, you know, it'd be interesting to hear, Barry, why we don't feel we perhaps moved as quickly as we could have done.
Thank you for the question, Chairman. I don't know why you're feeling as you are. I take it on board. We are moving at a pace, as it shows in the report, that we are getting a lot of information relating to locations, but it does need to be mapped, and it is being mapped on there. But we are pushing forward to get more with the assistance, I would say, and my thanks to the parish councils who are using the drainage grant fund. It's invaluable to have 143 maybe eyes looking on it and feeding it back to us. But I take your point, Chairman. I'm sure we will come up with a progress report if that's what you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. My concern is this: there's great work being done. Nobody's denying that, but there's information that we could be capturing at the present time that we're not capturing if we had the new software.
Yeah, we take your point, Chairman. We are doing what we can with what we've got, as they say, and as you see, we are looking to greatly enhance our capabilities, and it will take a time, obviously. But I take your point. 2 years since it will be 2 years since it was last mentioned. So we are working at a pace, and I can assure you that perhaps we should be looking at updates of some description, which will come to you. Will come to you if you make a recommendation that way.
I'm sure we'll make a recommendation, and we want to work with you on this. I don't think anybody's saying, you know, we're all on the same side here, and it's for residents. It's just, I just think I'm concerned that we're doing good work, and we're not capturing that information and sharing it with the parish and town councils. And I'll explain why. You mentioned the work they're doing. You mentioned the work that Lanksmans were doing. I was at a parish council this week, and they still don't know exactly when the drains within that parish council or town council are being cleaned by Herefordshire Council. This software would enable them to see when you were next going to clean the drains within the parish, which would mean the Lanksman could schedule their time at a 2 months later or 3 months later to maximise the investment in the Lanksman and to make sure that the drains are kept cleaner and clearer for longer. So it's in everybody's interest to get that software up and running as soon as possible.
Totally agree with that, Chair. Just all I was pointing to really, because what BBRP do at the moment in asset collection is with the handhelds, with the tablets. It's easy to add onto the network. So as soon as you've found a gully, rebuild a gully, or you've built a new gully or system, it's easy just to put that into the network, and it's recorded and mapped directly. So we're doing that as we're going along and evolving what we've got, but we will come back and demonstrate what progress we've got and really give you a target to where we get to.
Any questions from the rest of the committee on point one around mapping, please? Councillor Baker.
Thank you. It's a question I get asked at my parish council meetings. I've got 6 group parishes and they all come up with the same question. When are we going to get our maps of our drains? My view is that they should know where their drains are. It's their parish after all, and they have residents living in all their roads, and so it should be, on paper, it should be a fairly simple process, but of course it's not. But what I have found, and I went round a particular problem road just a couple of months ago with Bruce Evans, and it was pretty obvious that there are certain drains on a certain stretch of road that are the problem drains, and there are others that are free running without a problem. And so really having an asset map, or whatever you want to call it, of your drains in your parish, you could then highlight the problem ones, and they're the ones that really need to be looked at on a regular basis.
That's it. We know where the frequent flyers are so that we can make sure our Lanksmen are aware of those as well, and we can minimise the impact of drainage problems there.
I'm sure it's the same throughout the county, because we are a hilly county, aren't we? And it's always the drains at the bottom of the hill where all the silt and the muck and stuff gets washed down the road during heavy rain and fills the gully up within minutes, really, on occasions. And you mentioned the Lanksman. I don't know quite how the Lanksman can deal with gullies.
Well, they do clean the gullies out, don't they?
I don't know. I don't know how they would do it. I mean, you've got to lift the drain cover off.
Bruce wants to come in on this.
Sorry, Councillor Baker. Some lensmen, there's a few around Ross and around, they've got their own jetting machine, or bring in that.
Oh, right.
And lifting gullies, it's just a bit of kit just to lift the gullies, and some people dig them out or open up where the outfall pipe is, or open up and cut grips in as needed. So it's a good way of keeping on top of it and clearing gullies and just making sure the tops are clear when they go through. So like you say, there are areas that will wash out, which are in need more than others, and then just keeping those key ones clear it just keeps the system running. But yeah, different lensmen do different things, and I think it's one that could be worth benchmarking across so people can understand what other people do.
I mean, I mentioned it just last week at a parish council and said, well, do your lensman do it? And they said, well, of course not. He's got no kit.
It depends on the parish and who's got the contract.
At the very least, you need a device for lifting the cover off. I mean, you can do it with a big screwdriver, I suppose, but that's not quite the same, is it?
It won't be a one-size-fits-all. But while we're on that, and I do think it is an important point, something we have mentioned before, I believe, is agreeing a cleansing specification for lengthsmen that's shared to the parish councils, so that when contracts are being drawn up, they are cleaning them to the agreed specification as prescribed by Herefordshire Council. I know I spoke to Ed Bradford about that. Have we moved forward with that?
Actually, I don't know. I can come back to you on that and report back. I suppose what needs to be done is it's different levels for different lensmen. So some have got the gully empty and got the jetting facility, some haven't. So whilst one could do that, the others could lift and clear out and clean. And
I think it's I think it might well be. You know, there's a scale of what can be done by the different lengthsmen, but I think parish councils would truly value an agreed specification that is the sort of a county-wide agreed spec. This is what this is the standard Herefordshire Council will be cleaning the gullies out to. And I say that why this is important, because we can hold ourselves to account at the same time as providing parish councils with the ability to hold their lengthsmen to account if it's not this correct specification, if the cleaning isn't done to a correct specification. And again, I think that would be it's something we had agreed we would do, and I would really appreciate a timeline and some information on that as well, Bruce.
But of course, it means with the lengthsmen, they've got to be offered the facilities to do the job. I mean, if they're going to hire one of these big sludge gulping machine, what did you call it? That machine? The big machine.
The gully emptier or the jetting machine.
Well, it's all in one, isn't it?
It is, and some have got just those small drainage rod things, so you've got to pressure wash water through. So you've got a hose, and some people have got those, just a simple one.
So I suppose if parish councils were told that their lengthsmen are allowed to hire a particular machine, maybe not that big thing, but because that would require training to operate that, wouldn't it?
Bruce, I'm just going to stop because it really is down to the contract between the parish council and the lengthsman that they employ. And, you know, I'm sure parish councils could specify, but that will be a budget thing, what they're paying them.
Well, that's right.
You know, they've got to put enough money in the budget for them to be able to afford to hire it. That's the reality.
But if we're singing off the same sheet, all the lengthsmen have got to do the same standard. They've got to be able to operate and hire in the same machinery. Otherwise, it's pointless.
I think it's if you are evacuating manually or you are evacuating with a machine, then it is there will be a different specification for each. Not something I expected to say at a council meeting. Right. Moving on. Undertake an urgent programme of rectifying and repairing... I've got the giggles now. That's awful. Undertake an urgent programme of rectifying and repairing drains, gullies and culverts where they've been damaged by the recent unprecedented period of rainfall. It's okay, Barry's not getting it. It's okay. Can we move on to the second point, please? There we go. It's in Teams. I put it in there. So we agreed in the motion that we'd undertake an urgent programme of rectifying and repairing the drains, gullies and culverts where they've been damaged by the recent unprecedented period of rainfall. So how has the repairs from last year's flooding gone?
Yes. So in terms of where assets had been identified for repair, then they were initially repaired using the existing drainage budget, and then there was additional an additional investment that was made available for last year and this year. So an additional £2 million of investment. So yeah, there'd been, obviously a lot of additional works, carried out, and I know that, in terms of some of the locations that had suffered flooding, we'd work very closely with colleagues in Balfour Beatty to make sure that they were looking at some of the right locations, and that some of those areas were being prioritised.
Thanks, Steve. I mean, obviously, we were delighted that there was 2 million allocated for this. Barry, would you like to update us? How has that 2 million been spent? Okay, Bruce.
Sorry, Chair. I haven't got the details on the amount of schemes, the amount of rectification on it, but we can get that. We can give you a performance update of what's been delivered and what the programme is to deliver. I think if we get that factually, then we can provide that to you. There's been some good work done out there.
I think it would be good to see. I mean, obviously, at Scrutiny Management Board last week, we were slightly concerned about the way a lot of the capital projects have been backing up, and we've not been spending money that's been committed for whatever reason. It would be good to know that the money that was allocated in this year's budget for alleviating and rectifying some of the flooding problems from last year has been spent and in a good way to prevent further issues.
Some of the additional resource that's been brought in is really worked really well, and I know that we've spent and done a lot of work, and we're coming to the end of that additional funding on certain aspects of it, so we're moving on with it, getting it done. I think if we can get you an update report and send that through to share with all members, then we can get that through to you as soon as possible.
Councillor Baker?
Yes, I'm just wondering if we're going to do all this work in a timely manner throughout the county. Do we have enough of these large machines to do the work? What I was thinking was, if we've got 2 at the moment, haven't we? If we had 3, one for the north, one for the centre, one for the south, that would be a start. And those operatives would know the areas they're going to have to work in. It was just a thought. But they're not cheap, are they? But we managed to buy half a dozen salt spreaders that we don't need this time of year.
No, we may do with the hot weather. Sorry, I'll go on a bit of a tangent. We need to dampen down some of the roads because of the heat coming up, so we use the spreaders for that. The basic is two gutting machines. What we've got at the moment is we've got, with the resurfacing, we've got one gutting cart extra coming down, doing the jetting around the surfacing, making sure we've got that clear before we actually do the resurfacing. BBLP have got 2 extra machines in doing what they're doing, and I think they're bringing an extra one for the additional funding. Is that another one? I think it might be one cart's getting another one into the area, so they're upping the resource to what's needed to be done to react to what's needed on the ground.
I think Councillor Baker makes a good point, though. If additional resources are needed, it really feeds into point 3, which was to develop a full county-wide maintenance schedule that anticipates the likelihood of heavier rainfall in the future. Is that something that's been done?
The work at the moment is in prep for. Ideally, this is the ideal time to get everything cleaned, ready for winter, and prepping that. There's a lot of work going on through that. As I say, we can get the programme and what we've actually achieved on it. We haven't hit everywhere, but it's done a lot of the hot spots. And working with Steve's team, it's been prioritising where we've had the recent floods. So it's been targeted in an area resource, but it's also reacting to what's on the ground, what we've had in the past, some of the areas we haven't been able to get to. So they've been doing those. And going back to the resurfacing, we're doing a lot of resurfacing around the county, and in those areas we're also making sure those areas have been treated and made sure that we're not resurfacing where they're needed, and that's really what's damaged a lot of the roads.
I think the point of this particular part of the motion was that we would be anticipating a schedule that did see heavier rainfall moving forward, because that's what we're all keenly aware is happening. So what would be really useful is to know if, how we're going to go about creating a schedule that does anticipate that, what that would look like, what we're going to base the figures on, because at the moment we are a little bit, it feels like we're a bit reactive. That's not a criticism, but I do think the idea of this part of the motion was that we are planning for increased rainfall moving forward, to minimise the impact upon residents. So if we could get a timeline on when this schedule might be prepared and how we're actually going to implement it would be really good as well.
We'll do that, Chair. Just a point on the programme. There is a mentioned schedule on the website. I think the report points to it. Maintenance schedule where we're hitting the A's and B and C roads and a programme.
We know there is a maintenance schedule. There's always been a maintenance schedule, and the point was this was something that anticipated the likelihood of heavier rainfall. It was a separate. We certainly didn't expect there to not be any form of maintenance schedule for the roads. We were aware of that. Councillor Baker.
I was thinking we're the only one asking questions.
We're just the ones that get very excited by drains.
Well, one does.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking, with regard to preparing for the winter, should we suggest to our parish councils when we go to their meetings that they contact Balfour BT or the council and let them know their problem drains? There'll only be probably a dozen or so on each parish where they've got a serious problem at the bottom of a hill, for example. They're the drains that are always blocked. And
I've got a feeling they do that, but do they?
So I guess it's worth highlighting that there's also been funding made available to parish and town councils for drainage works. So that's that's been additional funding that's been allocated to some of those areas to identify and come forward with I guess with cleansing work and I guess with small level flood schemes as well. So that's something that
is this the same money that's capped with the also the public rights of way footpaths? Yes. So the whole total is capped at 25,000 for each parish council.
That's it, yeah.
So and isn't there a small cap for the amount that can be spent on drainage projects, something like 4,000?
Yeah, and so what we're doing, one of the principal officers within my team, Henry, he's leading on that, and so we've had a number of either expressions of interest or applications come forward, which then Henry's starting those conversations with those parishes and looking at I guess what they're coming forward with and just having that conversation just to make sure that efforts are targeted in the right places.
Just so people understand, with the amount of funding we're talking about there, could you give us an example of the kind of projects that a parish might be able to afford to do?
So I guess a number of the projects, I suppose, would be around ditching, ditching works. That's I think proven quite popular in in some of the locations, and there's also conversations around some of the cleansing of systems that they can do themselves as well. So it's it's fairly low level schemes, but they're things that are important to them and make a difference.
Thank you. Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was good to get that commitment about the spending of the 2 million. That'll be very useful. And I was going to ask Steve has slightly answered my question because I was going to ask about the drainage grant fund and as well as that recent big change about the workforce joining us. There's also been changes for parish and town councils, hasn't there? So sort of what's the feedback been like? What's the evaluation been like for, maybe it's too early, for the new funding that they've been getting for, how the lengthsman's roles are changing. So it's about that, what the system's going to be to sort of gather that feedback and use it to, for improvement in the future. While I'm on it, I'm not strictly on your number 3, but shall I keep going while I'm... also, before I forget, I'm very disappointed that we've got 2 colleagues who aren't with us, who didn't send in apologies and didn't send substitutes. So that's extremely disappointing. About the management system, in paragraph 13, it says the council has requested that a dedicated gully management system be introduced but that's us, isn't it? You know, are we talking about, because we're now responsible for the management, does that mean when it says requested, does that mean that that's what we're going to be doing, or are you talking about the new contract there?
It's, from what I understand, it's going to be provided by the contractor. They're going to use that system that's going to be available to ourselves to manage the drainage systems across the county.
But we're responsible for asset management.
Yes.
I don't quite understand the difference between those two, sorry.
As part of the contract, they'll be bringing in that system that we can use to manage that across the board, which we'll then use in the asset management process.
Okay, so we'll get the system from them, but then we'll... Okay, but we'll be using it? Yes. Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, on the mapping, I've looked at the websites, you know, some of the other council websites, and it's amazing what you can do, isn't it? With the reporting, with the mapping, with the management. So I know that residents will really welcome bringing that in. And it is quite hard for residents to get a clear picture, isn't it? Because also partly because of, you know, as Bruce was saying, on the different parishes, and, oh, well, this Lengthsman can do this, and, you know, we've got funding for this, and we've got equipment for that, and this person can do it, and this person can't. It's really quite difficult, isn't it, when everything is so different. And another thing, which, again, might, you know, it's more of a general thing, but what often comes up, and I know I often ask about this, and I'm sorry if I should know, in all these areas about, you know, drainage and gullies and culverts and everything else and flooding, the issue of the council's relationship with Welsh Water is sort of very important, isn't it? And so I can't remember if we have regular meetings with them, if senior officers or cabinet members have regular meetings with Welsh Water.
Some of us do. Sorry, do you want to go on that? Yeah.
Ones that aren't in the heat of the moment.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess certainly, you know, for specific locations, you know, yes, we've had, you know, some fairly detailed, you know, conversations with senior management within Welsh Water, for instance. But yeah, yes, you're right. You know, our relationship with them, you know, is key, and so on a number of the sites that Balfour Beatty have been looking at in and around Herefordshire. As a matter of course, you know, where there are also Welsh Water assets involved, we've been linking in with them, you know, involving them. You know, in some cases, you know, where there's been, I don't know, overnight closures and stuff like that, ourselves and Welsh Water have been there together on site, you know, so that we're both observing. So I guess we have strong links, and personnel has changed quite a lot within Welsh Water as well. But yeah, we've had good relationships with them, and you know, we're continuing to you know, make and foster new, you know, good relations with some of the new people who are, you know, now within Herefordshire. So you know, that will continue.
Yeah, Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, and sorry, and sorry, Major's there on Welsh Water, but obviously Severn Trent Water are also involved. Obviously, it's Welsh Water in the main, but yeah, Severn Trent as well. And
you were
again,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you know, we've got good working relations, you know, with them. Philip Price and I go to regional, you know, flood and coastal committees. And you know, Severn Trent and Welsh Water colleagues are, you know, are often there as well. So you know, yes, we do liaise quite frequently.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton. Sorry, did you want to come back, Councillor
Do you
Toynbee?
mind if I just do a do you think it's really great to have good relationships with individuals and, you know, to meet people at meetings and things? I'm just wondering if, because there's such a staff turnover and things, if there's any way that we could improve, sort of make more systematic and regular, you know, how to integrate that relationship into the decision making and scrutiny in the council.
Yeah, because I guess one of the things we're looking just to re-establish is, from a flooding perspective, we're looking to re-establish roundtable meetings, if you like, So that would include senior people within the council, but then senior officers as well within some of the different risk management authorities. You're right, it's important that we have those, good relationships on the ground and, and senior reps within Herefordshire. But yeah, we also, it's important as well that, we elevate the issues as well as appropriate. So that's, yes, certainly something over the next period that we're looking to re-establish. And that won't just be with, the water companies, that'll include, other important risk management authorities such as the Environment Agency and other stakeholders as well. So yeah.
Councillor Foxton?
Thank you, Chair. 3 points as a practitioner on the ground with my ward. I always find Welsh Water respond promptly and are very, very helpful. Regarding drains and seeing plants growing out of them, when I had a locality steward, Natalie J, we would on occasions lift drain covers together, remove the weeds and sort it. Couldn't always do it, but if we could, we did. I don't know how we managed to lift it. It's a while back, but we managed. Okay. And also just everything, my thoughts are preempted here because you're both very thorough. I would have thought 2 gully cleaning lorries wouldn't be enough for the whole county. Just a thought.
Councillor Durkin, how do you feel about that? Do you think we need some more gully cleansing equipment?
Thank you.
Firstly, Chair, I wanted to speak about people lifting drain covers. It's inherently dangerous. If you value all your fingers and thumbs or toes, can I advise you not to do it because it's dangerous, potentially dangerous. With regards to the equipment, as we go forward towards our new contracts are coming up in June next year, we are looking at what we do need with regard to equipment. IT is a special thing important to this, that we do need to make it work effectively so that we do actually able to look at what's being asked of us and respond effectively.
I would have thought that point 3, developing a full county-wide maintenance schedule that anticipates the likelihood of heavier rainfall in the future, would have fed directly into perhaps the procurement of an additional vehicle. Right. 4, publish. Bruce, yeah, before we
Just
move
a
on.
quick one while it's in my head. When it comes to reporting faults and problems, do our officers prefer a what 3 words location, or do they want 25 yards south of Church Road or whatever it is?
At the moment, to report online, we'll take you to where there's drainage problems, so you can report it on the map.
You can just pinpoint it on the map.
Yeah, that's not that easy for people like me who are not really...
What 3 words, anything that comes in, people can use and decipher where it is and work with.
I think they're getting the hang of that at the moment because it's easier to get it up on your phone when you're out and about. But finding these maps, sometimes it won't, the little pointer won't move, I've found.
Fix My Street would also do it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, we've got the information coming in. If it's by a property, report it. The risk on the network, so if it's flooding or it's collapsed road or whatever there is, they'll decipher that and report it to the locality stewards, to the guys.
All coming in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Durkin.
Yeah, just to say, it doesn't matter which way you do it, just report it. However you use it, because it is important that we know as early as can.
Okay, I'm going to move on to point 4, which was to publish the maintenance schedule so that ward members, city, town and parish councillors and local people can have confidence in the plans. Has the maintenance schedule been published yet?
We've published a high-level maintenance schedule for what we're doing. It's online at the moment, so it's giving you what we're doing by month. The roads we're attacking, so that's on there. But I think it goes back to your other point, is really what we need to share a bit more. the link is on the report. Yeah. It's in
So the,
report.
the plan is that this will feed into the online mapping so that it will be a lot more sort of hyper-local, which is what we want to see, where you can really drill into exactly where and when it's going to be done. Yeah, and you know, it will save money in the long run. Right, and finally, point 5. Sorry, any other questions around that? I think that has been covered by some of the other stuff we said. Ensure the areas most at risk of flooding are prioritised for maintenance. Are we doing that?
Yes, so I think in the first instance, colleagues from Balfour Beatty have been doing what they can in terms of utilising the existing drainage budgets to, like I say, do what they can to remedy the situation. Where there's been more substantive works, identified, and the initial remedial works in themselves, won't potentially solve the issue, then I guess the intention is for those more substantive works to be taken forward into some kind of, if you like, development stage to really work up the detail in terms of what's required. So, like I say, in the first instance, Balfour Beatty are doing what they can, and then those requiring more substantive works, details of that are being worked up, and then, like I say, will be taken forward and added, to future programs. So, like
How are priorities being determined?
So in terms of, excuse me, in terms of the locations that we've looked at to date, the vast majority of those locations have been where there's been internal property flooding. So so it's those locations have been prioritised, and like I say, because we had such a lot of property flooding across the county during 2024, as you can imagine, there's quite a long list of locations that, like I say, colleagues have needed to go to. Yeah.
In addition to that, there's been a lot of work on the flooding, property flooding, but there's there's a prioritisation score that BBRP use, and it helps with the high-speed roads, high volume traffic, safety accident sites where they need to go. So it's trying to there's a broad spectrum of demand from property flooding to main A roads, B roads, and then the lower class roads, what the impact is, and if the network's at risk of breaking up. So it's a scoring matrix, but using the flooding as property flooding as a key one. It's just working through each scheme.
Thank you. Did the events of last year feed into how that matrix has been updated?
I don't know if it's been fully reviewed, but it has been looked at to make sure that there's been, one of the key things is having it reviewed properly, so people putting the scores together, but somebody to sense check it and make sure that they've picked up all the points of what's at risk. Because there's other things that come into, like key areas of links to hospitals, key infrastructure, businesses. Primarily the highest scoring is with property flooding and with high roads, accident sites.
Just curious, because when we did the review of the gritting, obviously we identified that the routes needed to be re-looked at and could be reviewed because it had been some time. I just wonder whether the matrix for flooding could also do with a similar refresh.
What we could do is report back on when the last time it was done and could take that forward as an action.
Yeah, Councillor Toynbee.
Thank you. Where does the silt and the sludge go?
Most of it goes back to the depots, dried out and then removed. So it's out to the back of the tankers and taken away.
So they sort of spread it out to dry it out?
To dry it out and then remove the actual waste.
And then where does it go?
Waste centres, I don't know the exact place where they go, but they do go to proper deposits. They don't just go anywhere.
Does it turn into nice soil that can be used, or?
No, it's not contaminated, but it's not clean stuff that can be recycled.
So it's landfill, probably.
I'm not close enough to know what that is, but we can get where the waste transfer goes to.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
Thank you. I think we've covered all of the points from the motion. Thank you very much for coming in and for the report. I think there are some recommendations that can come out of today. I think it's been very useful. I don't know if you have any closing comments. I'm aware, Councillor Price, that you've been very, very quiet. Was there anything you wished to add to the? Not that there's any problem with that. You're obviously observing. If you wanted to add anything to the discussion while you're here.
No, I've just been listening quietly to what you're asking. It seems all very sensible. We do have to. I would suggest that you do make some sensible recommendations as to how you think the progress of the motion and from that is going forward. Because the one thing I would just question, well, you made a point a little while back about that we expect the contractor to bring in the system for monitoring, and we're going to use it. I've made a note of that to raise at Cabinet on Thursday briefing. Is that the right approach? It's just my view on it, because actually I think we should be in control of the system so that we do not risk losing the data, which has happened in the past. So that's the only comment I'd have. Otherwise, it's been quite interesting listening. Thank you.
I'm pleased you picked up on that. And actually, if we are going to get the system, then that's an argument for maybe moving a bit quicker and not waiting till June next year. Okay. Any final comments from people in the room? Councillor Durkin.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say I think this is a very timely meeting today. Points being covered. We are going forward, as you understand. But what you do need to know, and the people of Hereford need to have the confidence that we're actually doing something, rather than just pop up at the end with something. That's why the questions you're going to pose, I think, will be timely and sensible, as reflect what Councillor Councillor Price has said, and also that we will, of course, continue with our quest. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in today. What I'm going to suggest we do is that we pause the live stream while we agree our recommendations. So it's what time is it?
2 minutes to 3.
Okay. If we pause the live stream until 10 minutes past 3, how does that sound? Okay, so we'll take effectively a 12-minute break. Thank you. Pause. Thank you. Apologies to those of you who may have been waiting a couple of minutes longer than we hoped. But we have 4 recommendations that we have agreed between ourselves. Would you like to read those out? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will. The suggested recommendations by the Connect Communities Scrutiny Committee today are as follows. Around gully cleansing. 1, to provide the committee with an update on the current mapping operation and to provide a date by which the mapping will be completed. 2, to consider early adoption of the upgraded mapping software before the new contract comes into force in June 2026. 3, to provide an update on the new maintenance schedule that anticipates heavier rainfall across the county with an expected publication date. And finally, to provide an update on the £2 million flood resilience grant.
Thank you. If we just change council to county. Is the committee members happy with these recommendations? I think if we achieve all of this, we will have achieved other stuff as well just by doing this, actually. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Cornthwaite, seconder. Councillor Foxton. All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, we've got the update on recommendations made by our committee, which I'm going to hand over to Daniel, who's going to do the introduction on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Presented to you is a list of your recommendations that have been made by this committee since its inception, and the responses that we've received from officers to those recommendations. As you know, officers or the council have a 2-month window by which to respond to your recommendations, and largely they do that. And at the moment, I'm happy to report that there are no overdue recommendations for your committee. I presented there the responses that we've received so far, along with an indication of whether or not the recommendation has been accepted, partly accepted or rejected. That column is a judgment call on my part to some extent, as well as the officers. Unless the officers have explicitly said, we reject this or accept this, we've made a call as to what we think the answer was. So really, we would be very keen to hear from you in terms of what you feel you'd like to do with all these recommendation responses. Which of these do you feel you can draw a line under because they've been answered to your satisfaction? Are there any that you would like to challenge? Are there any that you would like further information on? Are there any that you would like an update on?
Thank you, Daniel. I think there were a couple of updates you wanted to give us, weren't you, that we spoke about at the beginning of this meeting?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say that for the work programming item later.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, well, I've got to... Shall I kick off unless anybody else?
Oh, I don't mind asking the first.
Okay, Councillor Cornthwaite, over to you.
What I was just going to ask is there a middle ground between accepted and rejected? Because sometimes it looks, when you actually read the comments at the end, it isn't like it's been rejected out of hand, but it seems it is either accepted, rejected, occasionally no response. But I sometimes wondered if there was yet a middle ground somewhere that we needed to look at.
Yes, there is. Quite often they'll say that they partly accept something. I've noticed this too with your recommendations. There are a lot of narrative responses that neither accept nor reject and just provide more information. I think some of this is a reflection on the response. Well, it's just the response that you've had. I think some of it, though, has to be a reflection on the recommendations that you make. I think a recommendation that's more pointed, as you have today, for example, where you've given very clear actions, I want this by this date, is far more likely to receive a concrete, yes, we'll do that, no, we won't do that. But I think the nature of the recommendations that committees are making invite these narrative responses, which I think sometimes can feel just a bit open-ended, and you're feeling like, well, what? I would suggest that if you look at those, I'm not suggesting this committee doesn't, but ask yourself, did you actually make the right recommendation in the first place?
No, I think there's value in reflection, and it might well be that might be there's a lot to take in here, but that might be a discussion for a meeting when we're perhaps looking at our work programme at some point to have a period of reflection on the responses that we've got. I just wanted to go through a few things. I wanted to start with some positivity and say how it was pleasing that the satisfaction we got from the recommendations we made around housing. I think we can all be pleased with what came out of this committee, that the report that we forwarded, and then how that went on to the housing working group, and now the moves within the council to develop an arm's length housing development company. I think we can be pleased with the work we did as a committee and the responses we got from officers. I also think the work we did on winter maintenance was very good, very useful, and certainly I found it a very positive learning experience, and I do hope that the recommendations, they've been taken on board. I look to see how they're actioned, but they did seem to be very sensible recommendations and were well received by officers. So that was excellent. And we are going to touch on it I think, I don't know whether it's work programme, but the fact that the LTP consultation was extended.
Oh, yes.
That was what I was mentioning.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that for the work programme, but we mention it now. I think this is actually a really good one to fire back to you. I met Fiona Horton, who presented this committee earlier today. You might remember you made a recommendation to extend the consultation period for the local transport plan, concerned that the response rate was relatively low. I can confirm, obviously, they agreed with that. They extended the consultation period following your recommendation. At the end of the consultation period, Fionn tells me that the response rate was one of the highest in the country as a result of that. So thanks to your recommendation, we've delivered far better robust response to the consultation. So well done to this committee.
Yeah, I think that's positive.
Do you know when it's going to be published?
I don't, sorry.
Okay. There were a few things that jumped out at me that, from looking back, that I thought it might be worth us picking up. Going back to those of you that remember the Shire Hall full business case when we were discussing that in the dim distant past, I think there is still some questions around a lack of transparency on operational costs and the costs from Maylord orchards with unclear commercial revenue forecasts. I don't think we were ever properly presented with the impact of the sunk costs from Maylord. We were never actually given any proper response on the commercial income, anticipated commercial income, which was recommendation 9 that was made at that meeting, when we asked for clarification of anticipated commercial revenue from events. We didn't have any response. So I think there might be some value in asking for an update on those particular areas around Shire Hall. I'm sure things have moved on. I am keenly aware that at some point in our future activity, looking at capital projects might well come back to this committee as being a priority. The LC whip. Sorry, did you want to come in, Frank?
It's not on that particular issue, Chair, but what's in the paper recently, I don't remember that ever coming before this scrutiny committee, and that is all the debacle relating to what's happening at the football club. So suddenly we see in the Hereford Times that certain projects can't go ahead, and I think, which scrutiny committee was overseeing that? Because that's certainly been missed by somebody. And so it's just a comment. Should that have come before us at some stage? Have we missed it?
There's an argument to say it comes under culture, which possibly does come under us. If you want to bring that forward as a potential topic or for our work programme, we can certainly talk about that in the work programme section, if that's all right. Yeah. Yep. The LC, at the moment we're concentrating on the answers we've had to previous recommendations. No, that's fine, absolutely fine, but sometimes it's important to say stuff as you think of it, so it's noted.
You mentioned, did you mention Maylords? You did. Microphone, please.
I did mention Maylords under the Shire Hall business case, yeah.
Yeah, but it's shown as rejected on here.
I was interested in the Maylord, in the costs from Maylord, the cancellation of Maylord, and how that we never got full transparency around those costs, though we did request it. and we also asked for information on the projected commercial income. So I'm just suggesting that it would be, if we're going to cross all our T's and dot all our I's as far as this committee is concerned, those were requests that were made that have never fully been answered. When we moved on to look at the LC whip, we did have some concerns around the limited data sources that they were using to develop the LC whip, which was in some way a reliance on Strava. It might be worth still sort of challenging the adequacy of the data that they're using to develop the LC whip. I would like some assurance that they're confident in the data, especially in light of the possibility that we might be looking at that.
Bring this in now, Chair.
I think this is possibly a good time to bring it in.
Okay. Obviously, breaking the rule of flitting around agenda items, I'm going to jump forward to the work programme. Again, meeting with Fion this afternoon tells me that there has been some changing around funding arrangements for active travel, and as a result of that, they're bringing forward a scheme around of funding quite soon. We need, as a local authority, to do some work to get our ducks lined up, ready for that funding bid, because it could have an impact on how much funding we get as a result of that. As a result, the transport team are rejigging their priorities to make the production of the LC whip an absolute priority. The officers have asked this committee whether they can bring, as part of that process to help expedite that, whether you can consider as a priority bringing the LC whip to your work programme in September. The timing would be, in the words of the officer, perfect.
I would certainly welcome that, and I would feed in our concerns from the previous meeting, the LC whip, around their data sources sooner rather than later, especially if they're bringing it to the meeting in September. Yeah, are people happy with that? Yeah. Anybody else want to talk about the LC whip or any of the stuff that we had on that? Or you okay? The LTP, we still haven't had any clarity on the alignment of the LTP timeline with the local plan. This was something that came out. There were, those of you that were there will remember, we did have some concerns about the fact that the LTP, there's a 10-year difference between the LTP and the local plan, and we did suggest that the LTP should perhaps be at this stage more in line with the local plan. There was a feeling that that would be far more appropriate. So I would like some clarity on that. Is that being fully rejected? If so, why? And suggest that we ask for some clearer timelines. We also had some concerns around EV infrastructure, grid capacity, and that wasn't addressed in the responses that we had. So again, I'd like some realism about infrastructure limits in terms of rolling out the EV infrastructure as outlined in the LTP. There's no point in saying we're going to put all of this out there if it's not realistic, because the cabling ain't there, so it ain't going to happen. So I think that would be useful. Looking at Ross Enterprise Park, when we looked at this, there was an agreement that there would be a specific board for Ross Enterprise Park, and now it seems that I am concerned that there is a county-wide sort of business development board who I understand aren't meeting perhaps as regularly as they could. I am concerned this undermines local focus and urgency for this Ross-based development. I do not know. I'd like to ask whether there's a feeling. I'd like to express concern that the decision to have a county-wide rather than a Ross-based board for Ross Enterprise Park, where we're losing a lot of local knowledge and skills, certain individuals I know could feed in a lot to an enterprise board. Whether this undermines that local focus and what the thinking was behind changing the original plan. We were given assurances in full council that there would be a board. The leader gave me, in public, and that has changed subsequently. So I'd like to understand why that decision's been made. When we looked at the cultural strategy, we've had no officer responses yet, but obviously that's very, very soon, so that's not a problem. And then just flitting around a little bit, the section 106 would still like to know about improved transparency and benchmarking around the section 106 policy. We're expecting to see that sooner rather than later, and it would be great to have an update on when we're going to be receiving that. I think that's all I have to say on the report, but I'd like to thank officers for all their work bringing all this information together, and to say that what we will do is reflect upon the information we have received, and rather than just looking at gaps, looking also in some detail at the answers we've received, as Daniel suggested, to kind of improve how we process this information moving forward.
So just to clarify, you went through quite a few points there. Would you like Henry and I to get some responses to some of those points, generally for an update to the committee, or is it just for general discussion?
I actually think the points they've raised there are important enough for us to have those to come back to the committee.
No problem. What we'll do is if
is the committee in agreement with the points that I raised there as an update on our recommendations? Maybe in the next meeting, if we could have update on recommendations update.
Of course. So we'll if you could kindly share your document with us after the meeting.
I'll share the document.
We'll do that for you.
All right. Do we need to propose or second that, or?
You can if you want. It's not a recommendation. It's just an action of the committee.
Okay, I'm happy to propose that we ask officers to get updates on the various issues that I've raised here, and I'll provide them with that document. Okay, Councillor Toynbee seconds. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Toynbee.
Yeah, I also was feeling very positive about that, and I'm extremely grateful that it exists. And as we get used to this, we'll sort of get more streamlined about, because we can't go on and on sort of following up on everything, so we've got to be really sort of focused and realistic and businesslike about it, haven't we? The one thing that I know I often raise is the status of this Hereford City Master Plan, which has been mentioned in the context of the LC whip, but I just would like to go on asking that question of what the status of it is. Thank you.
I'm sure we can ask that as a recommendation. Is that an update on one of our recommendations? Have we made that in the past as a recommendation? Sorry, can you refer to which one it was?
About consultation on the LC whip.
It's been lingering at the bottom of your work programme for quite some time now, and for various reasons it's always getting bumped. So
it is in the work programme, actually.
It is, yes, very much so. It just,
but, while the plans are being made,
it just keeps getting every 6 months forward it goes. So
I think in light of the fact we've got potentially have the LC whip coming to September, we can put it under that particular heading for an update. Yeah, are you happy with that, Councillor Toynbee?
Well,
because it means it.
Anyway, in general, not just in the context of the LC whip.
Okay, but it would need to be referred to as far as the LC whip is concerned, I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, it's on your work programme. Obviously we're discussing the work programme next anyway. So there's I think there's. Councillor Toynbee makes a very valid point, really. The committee needs to either commit to this or drop it or do something with it. So I think at the very least, I think the idea that we get some sort of update as to how it's proceeding, because we know that the reason it hasn't come to the committee is because there's not been really anything to bring to the committee. So I think it's a very valid point that you even ask on a more formal basis than just chats in the canteen as to where that is, to provide that accountability.
Okay, thank you. Well, the covering report here, we note the responses to the recommendations that have been made by this committee, and we decide on any further course of action on any topic for which it's received responses to its recommendations. So as far as this motion to this committee is concerned, we do note the recommendations. We thank officers for their time and effort putting them together. And we have discussed a number of different areas where we would like further answers, or answers haven't been forthcoming, which we will provide with officers, and we will ask them to update us at the next meeting. I'm happy to propose. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cornthwaite, all those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Right, we'll move on to the work programme. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Chair. Currently, your work programme is looking perhaps a little skinny, but at the same time a little fat as well. At the moment, you have quite the backlog of topics sitting in your September meeting. I think there are now five in there. Obviously, something's got to give there. Quite a lot's got to give there. So you have two tasks really. One is around asking yourself which of those topics and when you want to look at them as part of your formal scrutiny within these committee meetings. The other issue is, so the other part of this is around reflecting on the recent review of scrutiny and the near unanimous wish of elected members to move towards more task and finish based work. I do believe, we've had some discussion around topics for a task and finish group. So really, back to the chair. So two asks really: which topics do you wish to look at over September and for the rest of this year within your formal scrutiny? And do you have any more thoughts about the task and finish group that you may wish to do around that work?
Thanks, Daniel. Well, I think from what's been said today, without it being on our work programme, the LC Whip has suddenly moved up the agenda quite quickly. I'm pleased about that because I know we had lots of concerns about the LC Whip when it came to us last time. I'm also slightly concerned, so it is important that it comes to scrutiny, that it's not being rushed through because there is funding all of a sudden. And, I'm sure officers, I'm confident, will do a good job, but, Westminster decides there's going to be funding for affordable travel, and the LC Whip that we don't have is a precondition for us to access that funding. So all of a sudden the LC Whip is top of the work programme and needs to be done. That's great, but it's also really important that we have a really good LC Whip for Herefordshire and not just a document that pays lip service in order to access funding. So yeah, I do think it is timely that it comes to us. And I do think people need to bear in mind that we will be looking at it as critical friends to make sure that it really does Herefordshire proud. So I think, yes, the LC, I would be in favour of bringing the LC Whip to the September meeting. I am conscious there was not a lot of time between now and then, and I hope not too many people are going on holiday in August. So, yes, exactly. Can you just remind, I'm aware we were hopefully going to have the tourism item on the agenda for September. That has been shifted was hopefully going to be discussed today. What were the other items that were on the back of the work programme, Daniel?
Bear with me a moment. So we have the Hereford City Master Plan. That was due to come in September. We have no objectives agreed for that yet. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we don't have any objectives agreed for that either. Broadband, ditto. Tourism and destination management. And then obviously there was something else, wasn't there, around tourism?
Yeah, I think some of these areas have been put into the September meeting because we're aware that there are areas that need to be explored. I would suggest a priority for the September meeting is now the LC Whip, and I would recommend the tourism item also goes onto the agenda for September, unless members have strong feelings around other areas.
Would the tourism item be dependent upon the completion of the transport hub at Hereford Railway Station?
No.
Let's hope not.
It's more about strategy, Bruce.
Okay.
I would agree with you, Ed, about keeping that on because we've discussed it recently and I'd hate it to sort of drop down. So I think if we can keep right on top of tourism and destination management.
I think it complements our discussion around culture at the last meeting.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking. Let's keep that a close eye on that one and let's really push on it.
And I'd like to maybe now look at the task and finish group idea that those of us that were at the at the meeting, the Teams meeting last week, looked at briefly. We were going to put this up on the screen, weren't we, Dan, if that's possible, please?
Yes, Chair, you've sent this document over to me. I'll share this with you.
Sorry, Dan, yeah.
I might be being premature. Have we agreed that we're knocking the other three off September?
No, we haven't.
No, okay.
Not made any agreement. I'll take it to a vote before we do anything.
Okay.
Frank, can I have the document back off you that I gave you earlier? No, I've used it. Thank you very much. So we were looking at a task and finish group. We were looking at issues that sort of large issues that affect the county, that we need to really understand better, and where we can bring value. And one of the areas that I've thought would be, for some time, I've thought there'd be some value in exploring, is how we mitigate the impact of the growth that we're going to see in housing around Herefordshire on the wider community. I'm happy to just read out a little bit of this. We've been forced to halt progress on the local plan because of national planning reforms introduced because of Levelling Up and the Regeneration Act. Despite substantial local feedback, government-imposed housing targets now require over 27,000 new homes to be delivered over a 20-year period, which is obviously a 70% increase on previous allocations. While Herefordshire must adapt, we must also protect the interests and well-beings of residents who are going to experience the consequences of this growth, not just in terms of housing, but in the increased demand on NHS services, school places, play provision, transport, employment opportunities, and their overall resilience. Recently, the Council has obviously initiated a call for sites and committed to producing a new style local plan. However, the public's trust and participation will be critical to its success. It's not just a planning challenge, it's also a community one. So the idea is that we establish a task and finish group that will examine how, as a council, we can proactively engage residents in this, what's going to be an unprecedented period of change. That we can ensure community infrastructure and essential services are planned, funded, and delivered in step with housing development. That's something that's so important, because it just can't be an afterthought, because we just won't take communities with us. Minimise the negative impacts of rapid growth on existing residents and services, and provide a framework for transparent, collaborative and planning. Collaborative planning that builds public confidence. So I've identified a few different lines of inquiry: community infrastructure readiness, planning with people, growth, equity and resilience, and monitoring accountability. And the way we could do this, we could be, we could potentially conduct a field visit to existing developments with community infrastructure challenges or successes, take evidence obviously from officers, developers, parish councils, NHS, education providers, look at various place shaping papers, house infrastructure strategies, local plan consultations, and then also maybe hold citizen panels and community workshops to hear directly from residents. And the idea is that we will produce a scrutiny report with some clear recommendations, possibly a resident engagement charter that could be used in future strategic planning consultations, but most importantly, a set of lobbying that asks that we can direct at central government that may well address a degree of flexibility in housing targets, front-loaded infrastructure funding, which I think is critical, greater support for planning authorities facing rural constraints, it isn't a one-size-fits-all, and integration of NHS planning with local plan timelines. The value to us as a council, strong evidence base for informed decision making during the local plan preparation. It will offer some form of unifying public narrative, growth done with the people rather than to them. That's something I'm really keen for us to talk about and look at. And will build a degree of legitimacy and accountability into what I know we all know will be one of the most contentious, impactful policies this county has seen in a very, very long time. So the recommendation I'm making is that we as a committee approve the establishment of a task and finish group that invites nominations for membership, with a report to be completed within 6 months to inform the local plan development and external lobbying. I think 6 months from now actually is probably optimistic. I actually think we could be looking at 6 months from the September meeting. And that might be the only change I would make to this. So it might well be that we keep our September meeting as it is, and that we launch we launch this as a task and finish group at the September meeting.
Absolutely. I think one of the, just a point of practicalities, is that you have 5 scrutiny committees, all of whom have embraced this new way of working, and all of them have fizzing with ideas for task and finish groups at the moment. And so there's, I would be mindful of the timing of this to make sure that we don't overloading officers who have to produce all of this. Take your time on it. I would agree it's a very important topic and one you really need to get right. I would also bear in mind as well that it's been a while, I think, since Herefordshire Council's done lots of task and finish groups on topics. I suspect from an early working that we're going to be feeling our way along a bit, so give yourself time to do the work properly rather than frustrating yourself in March when it's not ready.
I'm going to plant the seed of this as a task and finish group today, and ask all members to review, consider, suggest any potential additions, amendments, changes to this as a working document. But I will certainly be happy. I would look to bring this back to our September meeting. Would now like to agree the topics for our September meeting, and I would suggest that those are going to be the LC Whip, definitely, and I would vote for the tourism item. Any other additions you would like to see realistically with August in mind on the September agenda, please, committee members? Councillor Toynbee.
I agree with your proposal. There are 3 other things in the work programme for September. I'm happy to drop them. They're good in that they're specific, but there may be other ways of addressing those issues.
I think we need to, in a separate meeting, in a work programme meeting, I think we need to bat those issues around a bit more, because they're not shaped at the present time. The other issues, the other items on our work programme for September have already been shaped a little with officers, and I don't think there's it just isn't practical to bring them to September with sadly the number of, well, not sadly, just with August on the horizon.
Might I suggest something? Because I think, again, it's just coming back to the master plan again and to tourism again, and scrutiny's role here is, I think, quite often we're not looking at topics because there's a delay for very legitimate reasons. They haven't done the work, there's been a change in contractor, there's a change in personnel, there's also, different priorities. But we're not hearing that as a committee, and in a sense we're losing some of that accountability. So if the Hereford City Master Plan isn't ready, I would argue that it's of interest to the people of Hereford and to this committee that they say that it isn't ready in public and explain why it isn't ready, just to provide that accountability and to provide that, so if there is a legitimate reason, it can be shared and it can provide that assurance. Because at the moment we're just batting stuff into the long grass for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months without any explanation to the public.
I think it is a legitimate question to ask, as far as we were covering it with the answers to our recommendations and the upcoming LC Whip. So I do think that a question in preparation for the LC Whip would be, we need to know how this relates to the Hereford Master Plan, and what is the timeline for that? Will it be considered at the same time as the LC Whip? If not, why not? Yeah, Councillor.
We've got to be careful not to be too ambitious with our agenda items. Bearing in mind today we had a gully cleaning. We thought, well, that'd be 10 minutes. Yeah. That took an hour, and we've got a 3-hour slot for this meeting. And if we start getting to 2.5 hours with still 2 items left, we start rushing things and dealing with it not properly. We've got to be careful and be realistic.
I think we do, and I think we're not bringing that as an item agenda, but we are asking a specific question as to when it will be ready, so when we could look at it. And I think that's a very reasonable question. I also do think that, what's the law, that work fills to work always expands to fill the time available.
Yeah, We also need to be careful with mnemonics if the public are going to be reading these agenda items. And Frank's item about the football club.
Well, as I said, I think we should bring that to our next work programme meeting. I think when we discuss that and bat it around as to what we're going to do, and that will be diarised. But I'm going to propose. I'm going to move this forward. I'm going to propose that we go with the tourism LC Whip for our September meeting. We asked the questions that we're going to ask around Hereford Master Plan and all of the other updates on the recommendations from previous committee meetings, and that we all consider the idea of the task and finish group that's been presented at today's meeting with a view to adopting it formally at the September meeting. I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Toynbee, all those in favour? Carried. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The date of our next meeting is currently scheduled for Tuesday, the 9th of September 2025 at 2 p.m. I think that's everything. At 10 to 4, 5 minutes later than you expected, Daniel. Can we stop the live stream, please? This meeting is finished. Thank you.
Chair, the live stream is